Good afternoon, everyone. So, as I mentioned in my last post, what I recently did was I put out an ad to some local community groups, and I was able to obtain some old laptops, some old monitors, and I'm going to be doing an upscaling project with. Now, within my post, this is one of the laptops I got, but within the post, I did mention that I do happen to work in IT, and I can and will wipe out and destroy any and old data on the drives. So, as at least one of the laptops I did receive works, what I'd like to show everyone how to do is how to properly recycle. Let me rephrase. How to properly wipe out your hard drive if you are planning on recycling it and or just getting rid of it. For example, this hard drive here, right? This hard drive was installed in some laptop back in 2006, according to the manufacturer data. The data that's on here, well, given its age, some of it may be corrupt. This drive may or may not work. It's not the drive from this machine. You can, however, see the connection points here. Those connection points are SATA. There are devices which you can connect to this, which will make this a USB drive. Once this becomes a USB drive, you can then connect it into a computer, and you can attempt to enact data recovery. Now, this data recovery, not only will it bring back files, or it may bring back files depending upon how this drive was handled previously, other things that it might bring back are passwords, credit card numbers, personal information that was never saved in a file, but is saved on the drive. So, I'd like to show you why using tools within Windows, or within any operating system for that matter, are not the proper method for wiping out a drive, and show you how to correctly do that. But first, a little explanation is needed. So here it goes. Okay, so first things first. As we all know, this is essentially the hard drive. And as I just mentioned, this could be connected into any other machine so that hackers can take information off of one of these if they do happen to find it in the garbage, recycling, or even if you just, give the laptop away to someone or a computer away to someone and they just know how to do data recovery. Now, this is where your data is actually stored and what reformatting a hard drive actually does. So, we're going to use Windows as an example. That's one of the most common operating systems out there. Now, with Windows, all of your data is stored in blocks. So, say this is a 4K cluster of data. You have another 4K cluster of data, and your cluster size is defined when the drive is formatted. You do have the option to alter the cluster size, but we're just going to use 4K as a default. So, each one of these is 4K worth of data. I apologize, they are not to scale. So each one of these is the potential for 4K worth of data. Now, say you have a file that's 8K. Well, that's great. So that's going to fill up all of this. That's going to fill up all of this. What happens if you have a file that's only 6K? It's going to fill up this and part of this one. The rest of this space over here, this is all available space that can be used. So what essentially you have is you have portions of your drive which are used and other portions which are unused. Now, what happens is when you go to log into your computer, for example, part of your password or any cache data that needs to be recovered briefly or quickly is stored in these extra spaces. Now, given that some of these are your passwords, some of these can be, credit card numbers, stuff that you just put into Google, you just, made a purchase on Amazon, they can be recovered. So the goal is to wipe that information out, not necessarily your files. However, your files, obviously, those need to be wiped out because you could be talking about credit card statements and other financials, among other things. Now, with Windows, you have what's called the MBR, the master boot record. Now, all this is this is pointers that says, this is file 1.txt, right? Obviously, that's not the extension for a text file. It's txt. I just typed that. I wrote that wrong. Now, what this says is this file resides, say, here, for example. Now, file 2, dot whatever, and that file resides over here. Say there's, the file's over there. All it does is when you do a factory reset from Windows, or just want to, restore the machine to its factory default setting, a lot of the times all it does is this. It destroys the master boot record, which destroys these pointers. But the data is still there. So you could essentially, again, take the drive, connect it to a computer, and recover all of the data that was on this machine. So even though these files are gone, you can still recover it. Good example of this is back in the mid-'80s, when DOS originally first came out, the disk operating system, which obviously was the predecessor to Windows, ran on all IBM-compatible machines, there was a file called undelete. And if you ran undelete, you would get something like this. Did you want to recover, something like, it would be starisle1.txt, and it would ask you to put in the first character. So all you'd have to do is take a guess, type F, and then file1.txt is then restored back into the master boot record, and it's then aware of the file. So really, your machine wasn't wiped out, it wasn't formatted, the data can still be recovered. This, in and of itself, is a security risk. So, how do you destroy all the data on this drive? Well, if you want to take out some anger, you can, beat the crap out of the drive. You can drive over it with your car back and forth. The object is inside of this, there are disks. Effectively, they're platters. And you have like almost like a record player needle that's reading the platter, and it goes around. So what you want to do is you actually want to wipe out all the data on each one of the platters that's inside of this. So you can open this up, crack each one like you would with an old CD. You can drive over it with your car, put a nail gun through it, or if you don't want to be wasteful and say the drive works, but you do want to get rid of it, there are programs out there which will wipe out the drive and make it impossible to recover data. So what I'm going to do next is show you one of these applications and explain how the application itself works so that data cannot be recovered. And then lastly, once that is all done, I'm going to show you how to recover data off that drive where it will not work. Okay, let me rephrase that. I'm going to show you that it worked where data can't be recovered from the drive. So, without further ado, let's show you one of these drives, or one of these laptops. Okay, so this is the laptop in question. This machine works fine. I've already booted up. It's Windows XP. The drive appears to have zero corruption and works well. So, the drive is reusable. The thing is, though, I don't know who was using this machine. There could be government documents on it, for example. There could be jokes. There could be email chains. There could be random nonsense. There could be architectural drawings. I don't know what's on this. But as an IT professional, and someone who did state that they would wipe the drive out, I do have a duty to do so. So, one of the first things I always recommend doing when you are doing something like this is to edit the BIOS on the machine. So I already went into the BIOS, and I told it to boot right off the CD. I have a CD in the machine right now, which is going to boot up to a very old version of Debian, to a program called Erase. This program I'm unable to find online anymore. However, it works beautifully, and I see no reason to use anything else. So if you can find a copy of this program called Erase, by all means, download it and add it to your repository of files. That's not supposed to happen. But as you can see, this machine clearly does work. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reboot this machine, and when the BIOS does start, I'm going to press F2, which is one of the normal keys, to enter setup. Once I can get into the machine via setup, I am then going to go over to the boot menu and have this machine boot directly off of the drive. So, one moment. Let me just do this. All right, this is IDE 2 on this machine. F6 to bring this up to the top. Exit saving changes. Yes. Okay, so for some reason on this machine, that setting did not stick. It very well could be because this machine has no internal battery, and the battery itself for the laptop is missing. So, now it's going to, wait for it. Okay, it sounds like it's reading the CD. So, what this program's going to do is it's going to load an old version of Linux. Now, when you go to wipe out your machine, if you do want to make sure it's securely wiped out, you cannot do it from within the operating system that's going to be affecting it. Because the entire drive is obviously not going to be wiped out because that OS needs to be running the entire time. So this is from an external source. The CD is going to go in and it's going to wipe out Windows, wipe out all documents, all pictures, all files. Anything that was in those hidden spaces that I was showing you in that chart before, they're all going to be removed. And what this is going to do is it's going to format the drive over and over and over, which is probably going to take a good 6 to 7 hours. Formatting a drive itself doesn't take very long, but when you want to make sure data can't be recovered, you want to format over and over and over, and what this does is it securely removes everything. If you were, for example, only to format a drive once, there's a pretty good chance you can bring the data back. Not all of it, but likely some of it. By formatting 7 or 8 or 20 times, however many this application does, where it takes so long, you're ensuring that the drive itself is secure and that there is no data remaining on it. To test this, once this application is done, you can then go ahead and use a program like, say, Kali Linux, which is a security version of Linux, and attempt to use PhotoRec to restore the data. Now that this program is running, I'm just going to hit overwrite disk 1, and then this is going to go through the different cycles. Each one of these cycles is a different formatting. So once it completes the formatting, you can attempt to recover the data with PhotoRec. If you can pull any data off of it, there was something else going on, and you should probably just physically destroy the disk. I've never seen that happen using this application before. In my experience, this completely wipes everything out, and I can't recover any data after the fact. So once this is done, I'm going to attempt to pull some data back from it, confirm that nothing is there, and then this machine is good to be reused or involved in one of the other upcycle projects I have going on. We'll be back once this is done, probably tomorrow. And now that's done. It took about 7.5 hours for that to complete. It's now the next day, and as you can see, the machine is now booting up and showing that there is no operating system found. My next task will be to remove the drive from this machine and see if I can effect a recovery, which I should not be able to. Now it's time to liberate the drive. Alright, there's the cover. Now, on this drive itself, there's one extra screw down here that we need to remove, and this is securing apologize, I'm trying to do this with one hand, and this is securing the remainder of the drive into the laptop. Let's just pull this out so we don't lose the screw. Lovely. All right, as you can see, this drive is also SATA. I'm going to go ahead, get my adapter, and connect this up to the computer. All right, the drive's now connected. Got the SATA cable, and the power SATA, and the power for the SATA, I should say. And the other end of this is USB. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect it to my laptop, which is Windows-based, and I'm going to be running PhotoRec to effect a data recovery of what I had just wiped out on this drive, and hopefully it will bring back nothing. So, as you can see, Windows is showing that there's nothing on this drive. Now, let's do the recovery. All right. The drive has been connected to the laptop, and as you can see on the screen, the utility is running. I am attempting to effect data recovery. There is a directory, and I did spell recovery from old laptop wrong, but that is the directory where I'm going to check once this is done to make sure that nothing is recoverable. There were two options when I did start this recovery, to either recover based upon the master boot record, which I don't want to do, so I selected without partition, which will take longer. So far, the time has been jumping anywhere between the estimated time to completion between an hour and a half and 3.5 hours. So once this is done, I'm going to open up that directory and see if there is any data inside of it. So, see you in a little bit. All right, well, that's done. And as you can see here, 0 files were recovered. So the formatting multiple times with that old program I have erased did work. And now this drive is safe to be reused, resold, dismantled, whatever needs to be done with it. There is no data left on it. There is no risk of any data being recovered.